Today we are going to talk about a tough subject, and it's about branding. And I believe this is one of the most difficult concepts to understand for small and big business, because I think most companies believe branding is just about, what we're going to communicate and how we're going to communicate it. But my definition of branding is just your level of value you have with your customers. And it's important to understand that branding is just not a surface concept, but there's some deep underpinnings or tactics that are well worth your attention in terms of understanding what they are and what they're designed to do. And I've identified three. I mean, there's obviously probably more, but these three capture what I think are the most important ones to look at and relate them to the type of businesses that you have. The first one is associative branding. Communicating associations with high impact people is basically what associative branding is. So it's basically taking your company and aligning it with something else that's in close relation. And I picked these four brands, number one, because they're in the same category in terms of performance, but I picked them also because I know you'll understand some of the things that you've seen in the past and be able to relate to those. And associative branding is great, but it's also difficult. And it's great in the sense that it helps you leverage an idea or concept in a bigger way. So for instance, when you see Nike and they have different athletes that represent their brand, that's great because they're able to leverage what they stand for and also use that alignment with different athletes. But the tough part of associative branding is your brand must live past the association. If your single message is associative branding, then you have to always be in the mode of keeping those associations alive. And that can be difficult, especially if you're a smaller company. Nike and Adidas and Puma and Under Armour can all basically line up athletes to keep reinforcing that message. Pain branding, some people like to say ailment branding, but I look at pain branding as a solution-based concept that provides a solution. And in this same case, all of these brands, they develop technologies that allow you to do specific things better. Run faster, jump higher, all that, take care of your foot in terms of low impact. So they do things that help you get from one place to the other. And this is very solution oriented, which is also very important in terms of what your brand is going to stand for with your customer base. And then the last one is connective branding. And I think this is where most brands fall short because this involves a real comprehensive approach to looking at your customer. And basically what it is, it's just core-based values that connect to the emotional aspect of the customer. And we've seen it with Nike, we've seen it with Apple, we've seen it with Coke, we've seen it with Tom's Shoes. So here it's not about the association, it's not necessarily about the specific solution that is going to help you conquer, but it's more about getting down into the fabric of what makes people tick. And that's connective branding. Now, looking at this slide, what you notice right off the bat is most people do the associative branding very well, and they do the pain branding very well because that's the easiest part of branding. Getting leverage with other things that are in line with you and other brands that are aligned with you, associative. Pain, hey, we're going to help you solve this by using this product. That's great. But connective branding, to me, is the most important because now you are aligning your core values with the core values of your customer. And when you're able to build a branding communication based on that, your message will resonate in such a way that it moves your customer to engage. And I like to associate real-time examples of this because It'll be easier for you to understand. And I just picked these three, but Coke had their, share a Coke with, and all the bottles were personalized. So it was Chris and Emma and all these different names that spoke to, the general public. Nike had Find Your Greatness. If you remember this commercial, it was just, a kid, he was running, he's overweight and he's way in the back, and you see him running and you hear his footsteps. And then he gets to the front of the camera, and it basically says, Find Your Greatness. And they were speaking to people in a very deep and emotional way, because it wasn't about, be like LeBron James or be like Michael Jordan. It was saying, hey, you can find greatness in yourself. It's just about working at it. And then the last one is Dove, which, actually my wife showed me this one, and it touched me because it touched on the values that women look at themselves. So how they, would describe their appearance. And it was really emotional if you haven't seen it. It was about how a woman would describe themselves to somebody and how somebody else that met that same person would describe them. And it was a stark difference. And in the picture there, on her right side, you see that's how she described herself. And then on her left side, you see how somebody else described her. And it's two different portrayals of the same person. And it just was uncovering, women should think, and not be so critical of their looks and themselves as women. But all of these basically went back to one message, and a couple different factors, is that all of them were personalized and lined with shared values. So all of these were about directly hitting the customer without any interference or noise. So anybody can relate to these three aspects. Even men could relate to the Dove one. And then it focused on mass customization. So all of it was designed to hit everybody at a very emotional level, and all focused on ordinary people. So there was no celebrities, nothing like that. It was all about you as the customer. And this is a portrayal of you, just an ordinary person. And these are the values that we know you have, and these are the values that we care about. And then all of them were shareable on a wide scale, because when you think about these, anything that is personal and personalized to you, you're going to want to share with other people, because you believe that they might be struggling with the same thing, or they might have the same ideas about something. So it's very shareable in that aspect. And then mass integration. And that just means that the message needs to be fortified through every channel, because that's how you build a non-diluted message for your brand. And that when I talk about branding core values, and these are just words to build shared values around, I like to use one word for a lot of them, because the one word allows you not to have any wiggle room in getting too lengthy with your description or what your target is. And for me, it's really about how we feel about what we do, and how we communicate that to the customer is important in them registering your brand and caring about your brand. And eventually, when it's all said and done, being an advocate or an evangelist for your brand. So here's 3 questions I want you to look at. Does the brand continue to live beyond the association? And I've seen many companies that do these one-offs, and they're really great ideas, but after the event or after the association, it's back to normal. And you have to ask yourself, how do you build a sustainable association? Because you want that message, whatever it is, to sustain itself beyond that one time. So you got to make sure that you're building a consistency in that area. The next one is the brand creating deep value statements that stick to the customer? That's what we talked about. Getting down to the fabric of how people feel and being able to tailor a message towards those feelings. Are the concepts creating social currency? Does this make me look good to share it? And in a digital environment, and that's where we're heading, it's gradual, but it's happening. We want to make sure that things we do have enough value that it's shareable, that somebody's willing to pass it on. And then 3 more questions, and these also have one answer. Are the brand's core beliefs clearly aligned through all marketing efforts? And this is important because I think a lot of companies, they get into such a creative situation where they want to do all these different things, but true branding sometimes can be a little boring because it's about being consistent with a message and making sure that that message is driven through every marketing effort, because that's the only way you're going to get the biggest impact. Because if you don't, you get a diluted message and you don't get a message that's memorable. And does the brand have a social media strategy that engages customers to participate? Because participation is how you get them engaged with your brand. It's one thing to connect with them emotionally, but now do you have a reason for them to participate? And a lot of it could be just, viewpoints on how the brand could be better, or, are we creating enough incentives that the customer wants to participate in our brand, or incentives that are meaningful? Do the campaigns integrate across all marketing? So lastly, creating a strategy is really about hearing what your customers think, understanding how they feel, and understanding what they care about. Once you can get to that level of thought process and communication, it allows them to speak in a very honest dialogue with you as a brand, and your brand can also communicate in a very honest way back. And that's where you get a beautiful relationship where everything is transparent and candid. I hope you enjoyed this. I really look at branding as sometimes a lost leader, as they say, because it's a hard practice, because you don't necessarily get a return out of it immediately, but the return will come if you keep drilling down and getting to what these people care about. And when you do that, you will see that not only will your revenue go up, but how people will care about your brand to the point where it's almost like a family member. They get that passionate. When you think of people like Whole Foods or Apple or Nike, people that stick to those brands are typically very passionate about it. And as a result, it improves their revenue. Hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it myself, and I hope you look forward to watching the other modules.